when you have lens distortion, even if it's just minor, I always used to say, well, screw it, so what? I'll just, you know, I'm going to be putting the building right over it anyway. I'm going to cover it up so it's off a little bit. What's the difference? I'm not going to go crazy trying to distort it. But you know what? The truth is that when you have a distorted plate, it throws off the focal length. And if it throws off the focal length, then your building's just going to look like it's sitting on a different angle. Depending on how severe the distortion is. So a quick way that I do it is I go into After Effects and I make a solid, like 1 pixel wide. And this is just a solid 1 pixel wide. And, I'll scrub down to where I can find some vertical lines that are on as close to the edge as possible. And I could see right here that this building you could see it. It's got like a curve to it. It's going like a half moon. And there's a line here that I know is straight. So, if you get optics compensation and put it in, and first line up the line as close as you can. Let me lock it. I'm not putting it on the line because it's going to be hard for me to see if it goes off. But I'm right next to the line, as you can see. There's a little space there. And you can see it's just off. You can see this is just going right through and coming out the other side of the line here. So, just put in optics unlock it. Just put in the plug-in, the filter, and hit reverse. This is it. Reset. And just stretch it out until it lines up. And you're going to have to do you have to rotate it again. This is where you're going to have to do a lot of tweaking. Now, there are plugins, I know, in Nuke and in After Effects that you can put in. It'll take it out automatically. But this is more intuitive. And I feel that I don't know. I like doing it myself. I want to see what's going on. I don't like the computer just saying, yep, this is what it is. It's still a little... Okay. Well, nevertheless... So, after tweaking... I came up with... Believe it or not... I came up with about 28. .28 seemed to be just right. And what you could do is you can find another frame like here. Oh, that's why you gotta lock it. And you can do like this line down here. Yeah, it's straight down. Okay, so you get the point. Here's the before, after. Before, after. You can see that barrel. Okay, and then you just render it out, and that's your undistorted plate. And when you finally do all your CG and you put everything back, your final render, you put optics compensation back in, and you do a reverse. Like that. and you'll redistort your plate, and you'll redistort your CG. Okay, so I'm bringing in my undistorted plate, and it's a nodal pan, and it's 30 frames. Okay. So here's my undistorted plate, and I'm just going to hit track, just strictly default. And I'll tell you why I do this. I know they always say, I read so many tutorials, they'll say, oh, put user tracks on. You got to put your feature tracks. You got to put your user tracks. Okay, and then you got to put 7 of these, and 2 of those, and 5 of these. And then I do all of that, and I get a shitty track. I find just start with the default settings. If it, for some reason, it's not good enough, then you could start tweaking it. But I find a lot of times my best solves are just straight default settings. You know, nothing fancy, nothing crazy, unless there's a problem, which there is in this footage. And this is why I want to show, this is why I'm making this tutorial, is because I've seen 1,000 tutorials on how to track shots, and you can track them by hand. They're so damn easy to do. They never show you the, you know, really hard shots or problematic shots. So here's a problematic shot. Now it's tracking. Now watch what happens at frame 284, I think, or 283. Watch, it's tracking. Look, everything is lovely. It's tracking. Oh, how wonderful the track is. And what happened? It stopped. What? Oh, there they are. Well, that doesn't seem like such a problem, is it? Maybe there's no problem. No, there's a big problem. The problem is that there are drop frames around 284. And I think it's because of motion blur. There's a lot of motion. Although there's more motion blur later on in the shot, and it tracks it fine. But for some reason, there's about 7 frames in the middle that Boujou doesn't like, and it just dropped them. Okay, so here is Boujou's track. And, you know, if you're going like this, you go, okay. But if you slow it down, you'll see, hey, oh, where'd it go? It's gone. Okay. So, if you read the manual, it'll say, well, what you do is, on these areas, you put locators. You could put a locator here, you could put a locator here, and you could add target tracks and all that other fun stuff. And then you can put a zillion of them in these areas, so it can help Boujou along. Bullshit. I've put about 900 tracks in here, and I still failed, and it still looked like shit. So this is how I've solved it. Alright, let me get rid of this. Alright, so I went back up to tracker, and I decided, well, let's change the default. Let's try, oh, I don't know, a larger features. Well, I'm not going to waste your time with that because it failed as well. I brought it down to just where it would just track the building, and it failed again. But then I went to a large track, and I put the large in. Large features. It will track large features as opposed to small features. And I'm not a big fan of tracking the sky because it's gonna be all jiggly. But I know there's a problem with motion blur, so it needs a lot to grab onto. So let's go like that. And solve it again. And I want to refeature it. It's going to delete. Yes, please. Okay. So I'll let it track, and then I'll speed up to, I'll come back at 284. Okay. So it's chugging along, it's tracking bigger features, and it's getting to the 284 mark where it would go out, which is right about here. And son of a bitch, it worked. It's tracking along. Alright, so let's see what we get with this. I'll speed it up and I'll come back. Alright, so it's done now. So at least now I got a track. And I didn't have to spend 5 hours putting locators all over the goddamn place. Okay. But let's not brag yet. Let's hit solve. I like to hit optimize. It smooths out any jitters. And this thing, of course, should just go as quickly as possible. It's a nodal pan, so nodal pans will always solve quicker than free moves. Right. Come on. Get over there. Alright, it's done. So, let's examine it. So I look at it and I go, okay, it looks pretty good. Let me just look at it in 3D. Alright, so it goes up. Looks good to me. So let's examine it a little more closely. So I'll just select, go to scene geometry, get a hint, connect it, update it, and then go to overlays, show the ground plane, edit ode, and rotate it. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to try to match it up to the ground. I'm lining it up to, let's say, this guy's shirt, right there, right on his little text. Okay, and I look at it and I go, okay, well, he's sticking, that's good. And it goes up, and then when it comes down, I go, what's going on here? My grid is in a different place here than it is here, which means there's something still going on. I'm not getting the great track that I need, because whatever's going on, if I'm lining up my building exactly to this image and it tracks up and it looks great, if I'm tracking back down, my building's going to be off, which means my camera's off. So, yes, I can put locators. Being that I know that Boujou was having a hard time around 284. And I guess if you look closely at, you can understand why. Because it's got a lot of motion blur on those. You know, so I can put locators. And I could help it along. And you're supposed to put 3 to 4 locators on every frame. On every shot. Now, there's another way. Boujou says, well, you know what you can do? You can go up to 3D task, initialize key schedule. Okay. Oh, you know what? You're going to have to retrack. So, being that this solve is shit, I'm going to retrack. Okay, so the reason why I retract is because I want the initialized key settings to be not included into the solve, and I'll show you why. So you go up again, initialize key schedule, and do new user solve. And the focal length, again, like, let me cancel for a second. If you go over to models, oh, it usually gives you the focal length here. Of course it doesn't. Oh, because I'm on the user solve, camera solve. There it is. Okay, it's coming up with 18. So here's the new user solve. Initialize key schedule. New. It's gonna make another one. Focal length. Put in 18. Okay, so it gives you these markers, which you can jump through these buttons here. Okay, and Boujou is telling you that these are the frames that it recommends you put added locators onto them, or target tracks. So that means you would go to, let's say, the first one here, add like, say, 4 locators, jump to the next one, add 4 locators, jump to the next one, add 4 locators, so on. Okay, and I did this. I went through every single one of these. Okay, and I went I mean, there's got to be 40 of them here. And I had 4 locators on every one. And when I did the solve again, it still looked like crap. I still had, here, let me solve it again. I still had the problem where the grid was offline at frame 1 and at the end of the frame. So here, the grid is right here, and you can see it's right on that arrow. And if I go to the end here, it's not. So it's clearly the camera's wrong. And even though I know I could, if I take I can add a test object onto this, it'll lock right on. It'll lock right on. And it'll be fine if I scroll up like this and just stay like this. But if I needed to use this whole sequence and come back down, it fails. And actually, it does fail. It will start drifting, I think around 400. It'll start drifting off slightly. And then by here, it's really off. So, another way to fix things like this is to go into non-consecutive frames. Now, what this does is you can select any frame you want to match. I want to, in this case, I want to line up the first frame and the last frame because they're pretty close. Although, I got to tell you, I think 512 is a closer frame. Yeah. So, if you say do matching, it will find the points and say, well, I found 65 matches. That this point is the same as this point. And this point here is the exact same point as this point. But let's go to 539. See, now this found 108 on this frame. Go figure. Let's see what it does at 108. Commit. Okay. Now you would go, well, all right, let me go look. And it's still off. Well, that's because you have to solve. So even though once you do the non-consecutive frames, it's just putting points in, and it's knowing that those points are over there at the end frame. But you do have to resolve. Okay. So now we have it still right on that arrow at the, where am I? At the beginning? Yeah. And then when we scroll to the end, son of a bitch, it's right on the arrow. It's a little off. Because if you really look close, it's right here. This is right on that point. And when you come over here, well, you got motion blur and everything, but it's a hell of a lot closer than down here. So what you could do is you could go again. I'm gonna go where it found. Was it 509? Found 122. Commit to that. And resolve. So again, it's here and much better. Now it's just a hair under, but it's a hell of a lot better. Okay, and again, I can find another frame and do it. Now, word of caution, this is not as easy as it looks, because you could take a frame like 222 and try to match it to something like 333, and you try to do a match and it'll fail. And even though you might have the pictures exactly lined up, and it'll still fail. Regardless, this is a big helper. I find this more helpful than these goddamn locators. Alright, well, this concludes my video tutorial.